The afternoon settled gently over Red Bluff, softening the heat that had weighed on the land all morning. Inside Jonas's small cabin, silence wrapped around the three of them like a fragile blanket. The boy, Tawi, as Jonas would later learn, had eaten a few mouthfuls of cornbread before sleep overtook him again. He curled up on a worn bench near the stove, clinging to the warmth like it was the first comfort he had known in days. Jonas covered him with a blanket and turned to the boy's mother. She stood in the center of the cabin, unmoving, as if she did not trust the safety around her. Her tall frame, so imposing at first glance, now appeared weighed down by exhaustion. Her eyes scanned each corner of the room, checking, evaluating, silently asking if danger lurked behind the walls. Jonas spoke softly, not wanting his voice to crack whatever fragile peace had formed. "You should rest. You look like you've carried too many miles on your back." She shook her head stubbornly. "No, I help. I do not want to feel like a burden." Without waiting for permission, she began straightening the cabin, tying the torn curtain, stacking loose wood, adjusting the porch roof. Her movements were sharp, skilled, and efficient. Jonas could only watch, struck by the strength in her tired hands. "You don't need to do all that," he murmured. She answered quickly, "I want to. This place gave my son and me shelter." Her voice was quiet but resolute, a vow more than an explanation. Jonas didn't argue. He wasn't used to having anyone fill the empty spaces of his world, and somehow her presence didn't feel like an intrusion. It felt like life returning to a house that had been asleep. After a while, Saga, he finally heard her name when she repeated it softly to the boy, found an old iron pot hanging on the wall. She lifted it with ease and filled it with water from the bucket near the hearth. From a small leather pouch tied at her waist, she took out a handful of dried herbs, crushing them gently between her fingers. Jonas watched as she lit the fire, her large hands moving with a surprising grace, each motion practiced from years of caring for herself and her child in difficult places. "You'll like this soup," she said, not looking up. Jonas chuckled under his breath. "You sound very sure of that." Saga didn't hesitate. "When you survive with little, you learn how to make whatever you have taste like something good." The scent rising from the pot began to mingle with the wood smoke, creating a warm, earthy aroma that drifted through the room. Something about it made Jonas's chest relax, like the cabin was breathing again after years of silence. Tawi stirred, opening his eyes at the smell. He sat up slowly, blinking in the dim light. Then he looked at Jonas with a timid, hopeful expression. "Can I play with your wooden horse?" Jonas paused. That little toy, sitting on a shelf above the fireplace, was a relic from a life before war had carved grief into him. He had kept it not for use, but as a reminder that he once believed the world could be gentle. He reached up and took the horse down, feeling time shift in his hands. "It's yours now," Jonas said warmly. The child's face bloomed with a smile so small and fragile it nearly broke Jonas's heart. But it was real, and it filled the cabin with a light that no lantern could match. As night sank over Red Bluff, the land outside grew quiet, except for the long, lonely howl of wind slipping between the weathered boards of the fence. Inside the cabin, the warm glow of an oil lamp cast soft shadows across the table and walls, making the space feel fuller, almost alive. Tawi fell asleep again, this time clutching the wooden horse to his chest like a treasure he never expected to own. Jonas stepped outside to breathe in the cool night air. Saga stood on the porch, staring out at the desert as though she feared something still lingered in the darkness. The moonlight traced the tension in her shoulders. Jonas leaned against a post and spoke gently. "Trouble sleeping?" Saga didn't look at him. Her voice trembled faintly. "I am afraid to close my eyes, afraid we will wake to danger again. We have run so long, my feet forget how to stay still." Jonas let her words settle before answering. "You're safe here, at least as long as I can stand on my own 2 feet." She turned, her gaze searching his face, trying to decide whether she could believe such a promise. In the lamplight, her eyes carried something beyond fear, an echo of hope she didn't yet trust. Slowly, she sat on the porch step, resting her tired hands on her knees. "Are you certain you want us here?" Jonas took a seat beside her, leaving a respectful distance. "I haven't done much, but I don't regret opening that door." She drew in a breath, one that shook slightly, gathering all the pieces of her courage. "You are a good man. she said quietly. My son. He needs someone like you. Jonas blinked, startled by the raw honesty in her tone. She wasn't pleading. She was acknowledging a truth she had felt the moment her child smiled. Jonas placed his hand gently over hers. If you and your boy need a place, this is it. No more words needed to be spoken. The night understood the rest. That evening, in a lonely corner of the desert, something small but powerful took root. A family, fragile, unexpected, but real, began to grow. The days that followed settled into a strange but gentle rhythm. Spring crept across Red Bluff, softening the harsh edges of the land and warming the mornings with a quiet promise of renewal. Jonas woke one dawn to the sound of small footsteps skittering across the wooden floor. He stepped outside to find tiny prints scattered through the yard, looping and zigzagging as if Tawi had been exploring the world the moment light touched the earth. When the boy burst from the cabin a moment later, clutching his wooden horse, his face was bright with a joy Jonas had not expected to see so soon. "Jonas, can we go to the creek today?" he asked eagerly. Jonas tousled the boy's hair with an easy smile. "Wouldn't want anything else, but breakfast first." Tawi nodded enthusiastically and ran back inside like he was finally learning how to be a child again. Saga appeared in the doorway, her tall frame outlined by the soft glow of morning. Her expression carried a peace Jonas had not seen since the day she arrived, a gentle settling of someone who had spent years watching shadows. She stepped beside him, breathing in the quiet air as if tasting freedom for the first time. "For the first time in many seasons," she murmured, "I do not feel the urge to run." Jonas looked at her, not with surprise but with a quiet understanding. "You don't have to. Not as long as you're here. Not as long as you have me." Saga lowered her gaze, her voice warm with something tender. "Tawi calls you father when he thinks I cannot hear. He says you will protect us." Jonas felt her words sink deep, settling into a space he thought had long grown cold. He placed a gentle hand over hers. "I'm no replacement for anyone you lost, but I will stand for both of you as long as I breathe." Later that afternoon, while Jonas chopped a few pieces of firewood, Saga walked out to help him. She lifted a log nearly twice the size of what Jonas typically handled, carrying it with the ease of someone shaped by survival. Jonas laughed softly, a sound he rarely heard from himself. "You're strong," he said. Saga shrugged, though a faint smile curled at her lips. "My people must be. Strength is how we live." Jonas set his axe aside and stepped closer. "You don't have to be strong every moment here." Her hands paused mid-motion, and she lowered the log slowly. There was something vulnerable in her stillness, a quiet fracture beneath all the resilience she carried. "Tawi, he trusts you," she said softly. "He has not trusted anyone but me since the day he was born." Jonas's voice warmed. "And what about you?" She met his eyes fully then. No fear, no hesitation, only truth laid bare. "I am trying," she whispered. "My heart is learning you, just as his is." A breeze swept across Red Bluff, stirring dust and wild sage, carrying a scent that felt like a blessing. The moment held a power that neither of them needed to name. The desert around them seemed less empty, less cruel. Jonas felt something shift deep inside him, a purpose, a longing, a sense of belonging he had long buried. He realized that he wasn't simply offering shelter anymore. He was offering himself, quietly, steadily, without demand. And Saga, standing before him with a heart bruised by years of fleeing, was slowly accepting it. That evening, dusk deepened to a soft purple, stretching shadows across the porch as the sun disappeared behind the cliffs. Jonas sat outside, listening to Tawi's laughter drift through the cabin as the boy played with the wooden horse. The sound was light and free, filling cracks in Jonas's soul he didn't know still existed. Saga stepped outside and sat beside him, her powerful silhouette softened by the fading light. For a long time she said nothing. Her hands were clasped, her shoulders relaxed but uncertain, as if she were waiting for her heart to decide whether to speak. Jonas glanced at her gently. "Are you all right?" Saga inhaled slowly. "I am not used to quiet days," she admitted. "Silence usually means danger or loss. But here, it feels different." Jonas nodded. Quiet doesn't have to be a warning. She turned her face toward him, her eyes deep pools reflecting the last streaks of daylight. When that man came searching for us, you stood in front of him without fear. Why? Jonas's voice lowered, steady as bedrock. Because protecting you mattered more than anything he could have done. A tremor of emotion passed over her features, subtle yet powerful. She placed her warm, calloused hand over his. Tawi trusts you, she repeated softly. And I trust you, too. Jonas felt the words strike him with unexpected force. Trust wasn't something freely given by a woman who had crossed deserts and danger to survive. It was something earned. Slowly he squeezed her hand, a promise written in silence. I'm here, he whispered, for both of you. Saga leaned gently against his shoulder then, releasing a breath that sounded like a lifetime of fear finally loosening its grip. Under the rising moon, a warrior woman, once hardened by years of fleeing, allowed herself at last to rest. Morning slipped gently over Red Bluff, its pale golden light spilling across the hills and through the thin cracks of Jonas's cabin. The scent of boiling coffee mingled with the soft rustling of blankets as three people, once strangers surviving separate battles, slowly adjusted to the rhythm of a shared life. Jonas stepped outside, letting the cool breeze brush against his face, carrying with it the faint murmur of a land beginning to heal from winter's grip. In the yard, small footprints trailed across the dirt in uneven patterns, evidence that Tawi had risen early and explored the space with restless curiosity. A heartbeat later, the boy burst through the cabin door, clutching his wooden horse as though it were the most precious object he owned. "Jonas! I'm hungry!" he declared, voice bright with the kind of energy that comes only when a child begins to feel safe. Jonas laughed, a real full laugh that echoed lightly across the porch. "Then we better go inside and fix that." Tawi raced back into the cabin, leaving Jonas smiling after him. Saga stepped out quietly. The first rays of sunrise softened her features, revealing a calm he had never seen when she first arrived. She stood beside him, her long hair catching the wind. "He is changing," she said softly. "Every day he looks less afraid." Jonas glanced toward the cabin, watching the boy's silhouette move with life. "Children grow quickest when they are finally allowed to breathe," he replied. Saga nodded slowly. For a moment, neither spoke. The morning air held a fragile warmth, the kind that reminded both of them how long it had been since they knew peace. Later that day, Jonas and Saga moved firewood into neat rows near the barn, working in quiet rhythm. Tawi played nearby, running circles around them with the wooden horse clutched in his hands, his laughter ringing like a bright bell against the empty desert. Jonas paused to watch him. Just weeks ago, the boy could barely stand. Now he ran with strength in his steps. "He's stronger," Jonas murmured. Saga placed another log on the stack and answered with a soft pride. "He believes he is safe. That is strength we have never known." Her voice carried a vulnerability that tightened Jonas's chest. He stepped closer, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "You're part of that strength," he told her gently. "You fought for him when no one else would." Saga lowered her gaze, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I cannot give him everything. A child needs more than a mother who is always looking over her shoulder." Jonas placed a hand on the log pile, meeting her eyes with calm certainty. "He needs a place to grow. He needs someone who won't walk away." Saga studied him, her expression shifting into something deeper, something like realization. "And are you that man?" she asked quietly. Jonas didn't hesitate. "I'm here. I'm not leaving." The wind stirred between them, lifting dust and sunlight into a golden shimmer. In that moment, Saga's shoulders softened, her rigid posture relaxing, as if a weight had finally loosened its grip on her spine. She reached for Jonas's hand, her touch strong, but trembling. "Then you are more of a father to him than any man he has ever known." As dusk fell, the land around Red Bluff glowed with a muted amber hue, the horizon melting into deep violet shadows. Jonas sat on the porch again, the wood warm beneath him, listening to the comforting crackle of fire from inside the cabin. Tawi played softly near the doorway, humming to himself as he guided his wooden horse in small circles across the floorboards. Inside, the place that had once been defined by silence now pulsed gently with movement and life. Saga stepped out to join Jonas, her gaze drifting toward the distant cliffs as if searching for ghosts that once followed her. For a moment, she said nothing. Jonas waited, knowing she often needed time to find the words buried beneath years of fleeing danger. At last she spoke. "When we came here, I did not know if we would live another day." Her voice wavered. "And now, I fear leaving this place more than anything behind us." Jonas turned toward her, his expression steady and warm. "You don't have to leave," he reminded her. "This is your home now, if you want it." Saga nodded slowly, her breath shallow. "I am learning what it feels like to stop running," she whispered. "It feels frightening, but it also feels like hope." She leaned her shoulder against his, the gesture quiet and full of trust. Jonas wrapped an arm around her gently, letting her rest against him. Inside the cabin, Tawi laughed softly at something only he could see, a tiny spark of innocence restored. Jonas listened to that laugh, feeling it settle deep in his chest. "Whatever comes," he said, "we face it together." Saga closed her eyes, allowing the last light of day to rest on her face. Red Bluff, once a barren refuge for a lonely man and a hunted woman, had transformed into something sacred, a safe place where love had quietly taken root. And as night embraced the land, Jonas understood that he was no longer sheltering two wanderers. He was standing at the foundation of a family.